The Valori had been dying for 300 years. Nobody in the galaxy cared. Nobody remembered them. Their homeworld, Kethra Prime, floated alone in the far corner of space like a forgotten memory. Once it had been beautiful. Once it had been full of life. Now it was gray and broken, covered in old machines and poison air. The Valori were small creatures. They stood only as tall as human children. Their skin glowed with a soft blue light when they were happy. But they had not been happy for a very long time. Now their skin was dim and pale, flickering with fear like a candle about to go out. 300 years ago, the Krath Dominion had come to their world. The Krath were a warrior species, tall and powerful, with gray skin like stone and eyes that held no mercy. They looked at the Valori and saw only weakness. They looked at Kethra Prime and saw only resources to take. The Valori had tried to fight. They had tried to resist. But they were a peaceful people who had never known war. The Krath crushed them in weeks. After that, the Valori became slaves on their own world. They worked in the mines. They died in the factories. Their children grew up knowing nothing but suffering. Every year, more Valori died. Every year, fewer children were born. The population that had once numbered 8 billion now counted less than 12,000. They lived in underground shelters, hiding from the toxic winds that blew across the surface. They survived on scraps and hope. But hope was running out. The old ones still remembered the signals. Long ago, the Valori had sent messages into space, calling for help. They had begged the galaxy to save them. They had cried out to anyone who might listen. But no one ever answered. The Galactic Council knew what was happening. The other great powers knew. Everyone knew. And everyone looked away. The Krath had laughed at their signals. They told the Valori that no one would ever come. They told them they were forgotten. They told them they were alone in the universe. After 300 years, most Valori believed it, but one old signal machine still worked. Hidden deep underground, it sent its message over and over again, day after day, year after year. The message was simple. It said, "We are forgotten. We are dying. Is anyone listening?" Far across the galaxy, someone was listening. Commander Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the United Earth vessel Horizon. It was a good ship, not too big and not too small, with a crew of 200 men and women. Daniel had commanded it for 5 years. He knew every corridor and every console. He knew his crew like family. Daniel was 43 years old. He had gray in his hair now and lines around his eyes. He had seen many things in his years in space. He had seen wonders that made him believe in miracles. He had seen horrors that kept him awake at night. But he had never lost faith in doing the right thing. The Horizon was on a routine patrol near the edge of explored space. There was nothing special about this mission. Check the navigation beacons. Map any new asteroid fields. Report back to Earth Command. Simple and boring. Lieutenant Nicole Reyes sat at the communication station. She was young, only 26, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She was good at her job. She had sharp ears and a sharper mind. That was why she noticed the signal when others might have missed it. At first, she thought it was just background noise. Space was full of random radiation and echoes from old stars. But something made her listen closer. The pattern repeated. It was not random. It was a message. Nicole adjusted her equipment and listened again. Her face grew serious. Then she called out to her commander. "Sir, I am picking up something strange." Daniel walked over to her station. He looked at the waveform on her screen. It was weak, barely visible among all the other signals. But it was there. "What is it?" he asked. "It is a distress signal, sir. Very old design. I almost missed it." Daniel studied the pattern. Something about it made his chest feel tight. There was a weight to this signal, a sadness that he could feel even without understanding the words. Can you translate it? Nicole worked at her console for several minutes. The computer struggled with the unfamiliar language. Finally, the translation came through. Nicole read it out loud, and her voice was soft and troubled. It says, "We are forgotten. We are dying. Is anyone listening?" The bridge fell silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing. They all looked at the words on Nicole's screen. The message repeated again, as it had repeated millions of times before. We are forgotten. We are dying. Is anyone listening? Daniel felt something stir inside him. It was anger. It was sadness. It was determination. Someone out there was calling for help. Someone out there was suffering. And somehow, their cry had reached his ship. He turned to his navigation officer, Ensign Ryan Carter. Ryan was the youngest officer on the bridge, just 22, with red hair and freckles. He was nervous sometimes, but he was good at his job. Where is this signal coming from? Daniel asked. Ryan checked his instruments. The outer rim of the Andromeda sector, sir. It is very far. The signal must have been traveling for years to reach us. Lieutenant Commander Megan Torres stepped forward. She was Daniel's second in command, a strong woman with brown skin and careful eyes. She had served with Daniel for 3 years. She trusted him completely. But she also knew her duty. Sir, she said quietly, that sector is flagged as Krath Dominion territory. If we go there, we would be entering hostile space. The Krath do not like visitors. Daniel knew she was right. The Krath were dangerous. They were cruel. They respected only strength, and they had much more strength than one human ship. But Daniel also knew something else. Someone was dying out there. Someone was calling for help. And he was the only one who had heard them. How long to reach the signal's origin? He asked Ryan. At maximum speed, about 4 days, sir. Daniel nodded slowly. He looked around the bridge at his crew. They were good people. They had families waiting for them back on Earth. They had lives to live. He had no right to put them in danger, but he also had no right to ignore someone's cry for help. Set a course, he said. Best speed. Megan stepped closer. Sir, are you sure? We do not know what we will find. We do not know if we can help. We might be flying into a trap. Daniel looked at the message still glowing on Nicole's screen. We are forgotten. We are dying. Is anyone listening? Someone out there has been asking that question for years, he said. Maybe centuries. They have been waiting for someone to answer. Today, we are going to answer. He returned to his captain's chair and sat down. If we do not help them, who will? Nobody had an answer, because everyone knew the truth. Nobody else would help. Nobody else would even try. The galaxy was full of powerful nations and ancient civilizations, but none of them cared about the weak. But humans were different. Humans had always been different. The Horizon's engines roared to life. The ship turned toward the distant corner of space where someone was dying alone. The crew prepared for whatever they might find. Behind them, the stars grew small. Ahead of them, a forgotten world waited Dot, and for the first time in 300 years, the Valori's signal had been heard. Dot help was coming. The horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel above, Kithura Prime. What they saw made every person on the bridge stop and stare. The planet below them was dying. It had been beautiful once. Daniel could see that. There were shapes that might have been forests, lines that might have been rivers. But everything was gray now. Everything was dead. The air was thick with poison clouds. The surface was covered with giant machines, rusted and broken. Like the skeletons of metal beasts, Daniel had seen many worlds. He had seen paradise planets with oceans so blue they hurt to look at. He had seen ice worlds and fire worlds and worlds made entirely of crystal. But he had never seen anything like this. This was not just a dead world. This was a murdered world. "Report," he said, his voice steady even though his heart was not. Lieutenant Kevin Park sat at the science station. He was 30 years old, with black hair and glasses that he did not really need, but wore anyway. He was the smartest person on the ship, and right now he looked troubled. "The atmosphere is thin, sir. Barely enough oxygen to breathe. Heavy pollution. Toxic metals in the air and soil. This planet has been mined to death. Life signs?" Kevin checked his instruments again, as if hoping for a different answer. "Scattered across the northern continent. One count approximately 12,000 individuals." 12,000. Daniel let that number sink in. 12,000 people on an entire planet. What was the population before? He asked Dot. Kevin pulled up old records that the ship's computer had managed to find. According to historical data, the Valori numbered over 8 billion before the Krath arrived 300 years ago. 8 billion. Now 12,000. Daniel did the math in his head and felt sick. That was not just conquest. That was extermination. Nicole spoke up from her station. "Sir, I am receiving a transmission from the surface. They know we are here. Put it through." The speakers crackled with static. Then a voice came through, thin and afraid. It spoke in a language the computer had to translate, but the emotion needed no translation. "Unknown vessel. We detected your arrival. Who are you? Why have you come?" Daniel leaned forward. "This is Commander Daniel Hayes of the United Earth Vessel Horizon. We received your distress signal. We have come to help." There was a long silence. Then the voice spoke again, and this time it was shaking. "Help? You came to help?" "Yes, we are landing a team now. We mean you no harm." Another silence, longer this time. "Then, we will meet you. But please, be careful. The Krath patrol this area. If they find you here..." The transmission cut off. Daniel stood up and looked at his crew. "I am leading the landing party myself. Nicole, Kevin, you are with me. Sergeant Cole, pick 4 of your best soldiers. We leave in 10 minutes. Megan stepped forward. "Sir, I should lead the team. You should stay on the ship." Daniel shook his head. "These people have been waiting 300 years for someone to answer their call. The least I can do is look them in the eye and tell them we are here." The shuttle dropped through the gray clouds and landed in a valley on the northern continent. It was one of the few places where the air was clean enough to breathe without masks. Sergeant Andrew Cole was the first one out, his weapon ready. He was a big man with a shaved head and arms like tree trunks. He had been a soldier for 15 years, and he had learned to expect danger. But what he saw was not dangerous. It was sad. The valley was filled with makeshift shelters built from scraps of metal and broken machines. Thin smoke rose from small fires. And everywhere, small figures watched from the shadows, their pale blue skin flickering with fear. The Valori came out slowly. They were smaller than Daniel had expected, barely reaching his chest. Their eyes were large and dark, like pools of night sky. Their skin glowed faintly, but the glow was weak and unsteady. One figure walked ahead of the others. She was old, older than anyone Daniel had ever seen. Her skin was wrinkled and her body was bent, but her eyes were sharp and clear. She carried a staff made from a piece of old pipe, and she used it to steady herself as she walked. Daniel knelt down, so he was at her eye level. He did not want to look down at her. He wanted to show her respect. "I am Daniel Hayes," he said. "We came because we heard you." The old one looked at him for a long moment. Her skin flickered brighter, just for a second. "I am called Varys," she said. "I am the eldest of our people. I remember when the signals first went out. I was a child then. I watched my parents send them, and I watched them wait for an answer that never came. She paused, and something like wonder crossed her ancient face. And now you are here. After all these years. Someone actually came. Daniel felt his throat grow tight. We are sorry it took so long. Varys made a sound that might have been a laugh. Do not apologize. You came. That is more than anyone else ever did. She turned and gestured for them to follow. Come, let me show you what we have become. The underground shelters were worse than the surface. The Valori lived in tunnels dug into the rock, dark and cramped and cold. There was barely enough food. There was barely enough water. The children were thin and silent, their eyes too old for their small faces. Kevin documented everything with his equipment. Nicole recorded the stories that the Valori told. And Daniel listened. He learned about the day the Krath arrived. He learned about the wars that lasted only weeks because the Valori had no weapons. He learned about the mines and the factories, where Valori worked until they died. He learned about the Cullings, when the Krath killed thousands just to remind the survivors who was in charge. Why? Daniel asked Varys. Why did the Krath do this? Because they could, Varys said simply. Because we were weak and they were strong. Because no one in the galaxy cared what happened to us. She sat down on a stone, her old body tired. We sent signals to the Galactic Council. We begged them for help. They sent back one message, only one. It said that our situation was an internal matter of the Krath Dominion. It said they could not interfere. Daniel felt his hands curl into fists. They knew. They all knew what was happening. Yes, they knew. They chose to do nothing. Varys looked at him with those dark, ancient eyes. That is why your arrival is so strange to us. The galaxy taught us that we were worthless, that we were alone, that no one would ever come for us. She reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were thin and cold. Why did you come? Your species is young. You have no power in this galaxy. You gain nothing by helping us. The Krath will be angry. You might start a war. Why would you risk so much for strangers? Daniel thought about the question. He thought about Earth and its long history. He thought about all the times humans had failed each other, and all the times they had found the courage to stand up for what was right. Because someone had to, he said finally. Because when we heard your signal, we could not just fly away and pretend we did not hear it. Because leaving you to die would make us less than human. Varys stared at him. Her skin began to glow brighter, a warm blue light spreading through her body. Around them, other Valori saw it and began to glow too. It spread through the tunnels like a wave, like hope given visible form. You are strange creatures, Varys said softly. But perhaps that is exactly what this galaxy needs. Above them, in orbit, the horizon kept watch over the wounded planet. Its sensors scanned the stars for any sign of danger. The crew waited and worried and hoped. They did not know that danger was already coming. The Krath had noticed the human ship. And they were not pleased. In 3 days, the full might of the Dominion would arrive. In 3 days, everything would change. But for now, in this moment, the Valori were not alone anymore. For the first time in 300 years, someone had come. Someone had cared. And that simple act of caring would reshape the entire galaxy. 3 days passed. The humans worked fast. They brought food from their ship. They brought medicine. They brought hope. The Valori children smiled for the first time in years. The adults dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, things might get better. Then the sky turned dark with ships. Daniel was in the underground shelter when the alarm came. He ran to the surface and looked up. His heart sank. 7 Krath warships hung in the sky above Cuthra Prime. They were massive, ugly things, bristling with weapons and covered in armor. Each one was 10 times the size of the horizon. Together, they could destroy a small moon. Daniel's communicator crackled. Megan's voice came through, tight with worry. "Sir, we have company. 7 craft vessels, including a dreadnought. They are demanding we leave immediately." Daniel looked at the frightened Valori around him. They had started to hope. Now that hope was dying in their eyes. "Get me back to the ship," he said. The shuttle ride was tense. Nobody spoke. Everyone knew what was coming. When Daniel reached the bridge, the main screen showed the Krath fleet in terrible detail. "They are hailing us," Nicole said. "Put it through." The face that appeared on the screen was not human. Warlord Vekris was a Krath with gray skin like stone and eyes that were completely black. His mouth was full of teeth that looked like they could bite through metal. He wore armor decorated with symbols that Daniel guessed meant he had killed many enemies. Vekris looked at Daniel with open contempt. To him, humans were nothing. They were children who had only recently learned to walk among the stars. They were insects pretending to be important. "Human vessel," Vekris said, his voice deep and rough. "You are trespassing in Dominion territory. The Valori are our property, our subjects, our business. You have no right to be here." Daniel kept his face calm. "The Valori are people, not property. They asked for our help." Vekris laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Help? What help can you offer? You have 1 ship. I have 7. Your species has been traveling between stars for less than a century. We have been conquering worlds for thousands of years. You are nothing." Daniel said nothing. He just watched and waited. "Leave now," Vekris continued. "Go back to your little blue planet and forget you ever came here. Do this, and I might let you live. Stay, and I will destroy your ship and use your bones to decorate my wall." Daniel stood up from his chair. He walked closer to the screen, close enough that Vekris could see his eyes clearly. "Let me tell you something about my species," Daniel said. His voice was quiet, but something in it made Vekris stop smiling. "Humans have been fighting wars since before we could write. We have killed each other over land and gold and ideas. We have committed terrible acts against our own kind. We know war better than almost anything else." Daniel paused. "But we have also learned something. We have learned that the measure of a civilization is not how it treats the strong. It is how it treats the weak. It is how it treats those who cannot defend themselves." He stepped even closer to the screen. "You asked what humans know of war. The answer is everything. We know every kind of war. We know how to fight when we are outnumbered. We know how to fight when we are outgunned. We know how to fight when everyone says we cannot win." Vekris's black eyes narrowed. Something in the human's voice was making him uneasy, though he did not want to admit it. "And there is one thing that always makes us fight hardest," Daniel continued. "One thing that makes us forget our own safety and our own lives. One thing that turns us from peaceful explorers into something much more dangerous." He let the silence stretch. "We cannot stand bullies. We cannot watch the strong crush the weak and do nothing. When we see that happening, something inside us wakes up. Something old. Something fierce." Daniel's voice dropped low. "You have our full attention now, Warlord. And I promise you, that is not something you want." For just a moment, something flickered in Vekris's eyes. It might have been doubt. It might have been fear. But then it was gone, replaced by anger. "You threaten me? With 1 ship? You are either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both," Daniel admitted. "But I am not alone." Before Vekris could respond, his tactical officer shouted something. Vekris turned, and his gray face went pale. Space was tearing open around Kethra Prime. Ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. Human ships. One after another. Cruisers and destroyers and carriers. They came in waves, filling the space between the craft fleet and the planet. Nicole had tears in her eyes. "Sir, it's the fleet. It's the entire fleet." Daniel allowed himself a small smile. 3 days ago, he had sent a message to Earth Command. He had told them everything. He had asked for help, and they had answered. 300 human ships formed a wall between the Krath and HFY Prime. At their center was a massive vessel, bigger than anything Vekris had ever seen. The United Earth vessel Defiance, the flagship of the human navy. A new face appeared on the screen, pushing Vekris's image to the side. Admiral Samantha Price looked exactly like her reputation: tough, experienced, and completely unafraid. Her silver hair was pulled back tight, and her blue eyes were cold. "Commander Hayes," she said, "sorry for the delay. It took some time to gather everyone." Daniel felt relief wash through him. "Better late than never, Admiral." Price turned her attention to Vekris. The warlord was staring at the human fleet with an expression that was hard to read. His tactical displays must have been going crazy. 300 ships. More firepower than he had ever faced in his entire career. "Warlord Vekris," Price said calmly. "I am Admiral Samantha Price of the United Earth Federation. You have 1 hour to withdraw your forces from the system. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war." Vekris found his voice. "You would go to war over this? Over a few thousand worthless creatures? They are not worthless. They are people. And yes, we would go to war for them. This is madness. Your species is young. You have no allies. You cannot afford to make enemies of the Dominion." Price smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Warlord, humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, and 2 world wars where we nearly destroyed ourselves. We have walked on moons and split atoms. We have stared into the void and refused to blink. Do you really think we are afraid of you?" Vekris had no answer. He looked at the human fleet again, counting ships, calculating odds. For the first time in his long career, the math did not work in his favor. 1 hour, Price repeated. "I suggest you use it wisely." The transmission ended. Vekris stood on his bridge, surrounded by officers who were looking at him for orders. They had never seen him hesitate before. They had never seen him unsure, but he had never faced anything like this before. The humans had come out of nowhere, a young species that should have been weak and frightened. Instead, they had assembled a fleet that could crush his own, and they had done it for strangers. They had done it for a species they had never met, a people who had nothing to offer them. That made no sense. That defied everything Vekris understood about how the galaxy worked. Maybe that was the most frightening thing of all. On the surface of HFY Prime, the Valori watched the human ships fill their sky. Elder Varys stood among them, tears running down her wrinkled face. Her skin was glowing bright blue, brighter than it had glowed in centuries. "They came back," she whispered. "They actually came back. And they brought friends." Around her, the Valori began to sing. It was an old song, one they had not sung since before the Krath King. It was a song of hope. Above them, the human fleet waited. The hour was counting down. And somewhere in the darkness between the ships, the future of an entire civilization hung in the balance. Vekris did not withdraw. His pride would not let him. When the hour ended, he gave the order to attack. His 7 ships against 300 might have seemed like suicide, but Vekris had a plan. He believed the humans were bluffing. He believed they would not actually fight. No species in the galaxy went to war for strangers. He was wrong. The Battle of HFY Prime began at exactly midnight, ship time. The Krath dreadnought fired first, launching a volley of missiles at the human flagship. Admiral Price did not flinch. She had been waiting for this. "All ships," she said calmly, "weapons free. The night sky above Kethra Prime turned to fire. Human ships moved in ways the Krath had never seen. They did not line up and shoot like the Krath did. They danced. They split apart and came together. They attacked from angles that should have been impossible. Their tactics were creative and unpredictable, the product of thousands of years of human warfare refined and perfected. Commander Christopher Blake led a squadron of 12 small fighters. He was 35 years old, with a wife and 2 children waiting for him on Earth. He knew he might not see them again. He did not care. Some things were worth dying for. "Stay tight," he told his pilots. "Target the Dreadnought shield generators. We take those down, the big guns can finish the job." His squadron dove toward the massive crash ship. Enemy fire filled the space around them. 2 of his pilots vanished in balls of flame. Then 3 more. But Blake kept going. He could see the shield generators now, glowing blue on the side of the Dreadnought. He lined up his shot. Enemy fire was everywhere. He could feel his ship shaking from near misses. "For the Valori," he whispered. He fired. His missiles struck true. The shield generators exploded. Behind him, only 4 of his pilots survived. But they had done it. The Dreadnought was vulnerable. On the Defiance, Admiral Price saw the opening. "Main batteries, target the Dreadnought. Fire." Beams of energy tore through space. They hit the Krath flagship again and again. Without shields, the armor could not hold. Explosions rippled across the giant ship. Vecrus watched in horror as his bridge shook and burned around him. "This is impossible," he said. "This cannot be happening." But it was happening. And it was only the beginning. On the surface of Kethra Prime, the battle was different but no less important. Sergeant Andrew Cole had stayed behind with his team to protect the Valori. When the Krath sent landing parties to secure the planet, Cole was waiting for them. "Get the civilians into the deep tunnels," he told his soldiers. "We hold the entrance as long as we can." The Krath warriors came in waves. They were bigger than humans, stronger than humans. But Cole and his team had something the Krath did not understand. They had something to protect. A young Valori named Tyrell refused to go to the tunnels. He was barely an adult by his people's standards, with skin that flickered nervously between pale and bright. "I want to fight," he told Cole. "I want to help." Cole looked at him. The Valori had never fought. They had given up on fighting centuries ago. But something had changed. Hope had come back to them. And with hope came courage. Cole handed Tyrell a weapon. It was a human rifle, too big for the small alien's hands. But Tyrell held it tight and did not look afraid. "Stay close to me," Cole said. "Do what I do." The Krath attacked. Cole and his team fought back. Tyrell fought too, his small body shaking with each shot but never running. Around them, other Valori picked up weapons from fallen soldiers, human and Krath alike. They were not good fighters. They were clumsy and scared. But they were fighting. For the first time in 300 years, the Valori were fighting for themselves. In the tunnels, Elder Varys organized the evacuation. She was too old to fight, but she was not too old to lead. She moved through her people, speaking calm words, keeping them together. A Krath soldier broke through the defenses and found her alone in the corridor. He raised his weapon and smiled. "Old one," he said. "Time to die." Varys looked at him without fear. Her skin began to glow, brighter than it had glowed in decades. "You have taken everything from us," she said. "Our world, our children, our future. But you never took our spirit. You never could." The Krath laughed. "Spirit will not save you." A human appeared behind him. It was Kevin Park, the science officer from the Horizon. He had been wounded earlier, his arm wrapped in bloody bandages. But he was still standing, and he was still fighting. "No," Kevin said. But I will. He fired. The Krath soldier fell. Kevin helped Varys to her feet. His face was pale from blood loss, but he was smiling. We need to get you somewhere safe, he said. Varys touched his wounded arm gently. You are hurt. I'll be fine. Your people need you. Come on. They moved deeper into the tunnels together, human and Valori side by side. In orbit. The battle was reaching its end. 4 Krath ships had been destroyed. 2 more were badly damaged and trying to flee. Only Vikrys's dreadnought remained, burning and broken but still firing. On the horizon, Daniel watched the Krath flagship struggle. Sir, Megan said, we are receiving a transmission from the Krath ship. Vikrys appeared on screen. His face was burned. His bridge was in flames around him, but his eyes still held defiance. You have won nothing, he said. The Dominion will return. We have 1,000 ships, 1,000,000 soldiers. You cannot protect these creatures forever. Daniel leaned forward. Maybe not forever, but we will protect them today and tomorrow and every day after that until you learn that some things are not worth the cost. Why? Vikrys demanded. Why do you care? They are nothing to you. Daniel thought about the question. He thought about the Valori children smiling for the first time. He thought about Elder Varys and her ancient hope. He thought about Tyrell, the young alien who had never held a weapon but had fought anyway. Because that is who we are, Daniel said simply. We are the species that stands up for the weak. We are the species that does not look away. We are human, and we never leave anyone behind. Vikrys stared at him for a long moment. Something changed in his black eyes. It might have been respect. It might have been fear. Probably both. Then his transmission cut off. His ship turned and limped away into space, trailing fire and smoke. The Battle of Kethra Prime was over. Admiral Price appeared on Daniel's screen. For the first time, she was smiling. Well done, Commander. Well done to all of us. Daniel looked at his bridge crew. They were tired and scared, and some of them were crying. But they were also proud. They had done something that mattered. Admiral, he said, what happens now? Now we stay. The Valori are under our protection. Officially and permanently. I have already sent word to Earth Command. The Federation stands with them. On the surface, Sergeant Cole helped the Valori emerge from their shelters. The sky above them was clear for the first time in centuries. The Krath ships were gone. Human ships patrolled overhead, their lights blinking peacefully. Tyrell stood beside Cole, still holding the rifle. His skin was glowing bright blue, steady and strong. We won, he said, as if he could not believe it. Cole put a hand on his shoulder. Yeah, kid. We won. Will they come back? The Krath? Cole looked up at the human ships in the sky. Maybe, probably, but if they do, we'll be here. And we'll beat them again. Tyle's glow grew even brighter. Thank you. For everything. Cole smiled. Don't thank me yet. We've got a lot of work to do. Your world needs rebuilding. And that's going to take all of us working together. Tyrell nodded. For the first time in his life, the future did not look dark. For the first time, he could imagine a tomorrow worth living for. Around them, humans and Valori began to work together. They cleared rubble. They treated wounds. They shared food and water and stories. Two species who had never met before, united by a simple truth. Nobody should have to face darkness alone. 6 months passed. The galaxy watched and wondered. The great powers of the known universe had seen what happened at Kethra Prime. They had seen a young species risk everything for strangers. They had seen the mighty Krath Dominion humiliated and driven away. They did not know what to make of it. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from 100 worlds gathered in the great chamber on the neutral station of Nexus Prime. They came to debate, to argue, and to decide what to do about the humans. The Krath representative stood first. He was not Vekris. Vekris had disappeared after the battle, his career destroyed by his defeat. The new representative was younger, but just as angry. The humans committed an act of war, he declared. They invaded sovereign Dominion territory. They destroyed Dominion vessels. They murdered Dominion soldiers. They must be punished. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Many of the representatives agreed. The humans were newcomers. They had broken rules. They had upset the balance of power that had existed for thousands of years. Ambassador Ethan Brooks represented humanity. He was 60 years old, with white hair and patient eyes. He had spent his life as a diplomat, first on Earth and now among the stars. He knew how to wait. He knew how to listen. And he knew how to speak when the moment was right. He let the Krath representative finish his speech. He let others add their complaints. He sat quietly while species after species criticized humanity for what they had done. Then he stood up. "Let me tell you what happened at Kethra Prime," he said. His voice was calm, but carried to every corner of the great chamber. A dying people sent a signal into space. They had been sending it for 300 years. They were asking for help. They were asking if anyone was listening. He paused and looked around the room. Every species in this chamber heard that signal at some point. Every one of you knew what was happening to the Valori. The records are clear. The Galactic Council received thousands of requests for aid. And every single time, you did nothing. The chamber fell silent. You called it an internal matter. You said you could not interfere. You watched as 8 billion people were reduced to 12,000, and you looked away. Ethan walked forward, his eyes moving from delegate to delegate. Then humanity heard the signal. We are young. We are small. We have no great empire and no ancient traditions. But we heard someone crying for help, and we could not ignore it. The Krath representative interrupted. You broke the law. You violated our territory. Ethan turned to face him. Yes, we did. And I would do it again. Because there are some laws that deserve to be broken. There are some rules that should not exist. He raised his voice so everyone could hear. The Valori were not Dominion property. They were people. Living, thinking, feeling beings with the same right to exist as anyone in this room. The Krath did not conquer them. They did not defeat them in war. They enslaved them and worked them to death over centuries. That is not law. That is murder on a scale that should horrify every civilization in this galaxy. The chamber was completely silent now. No one moved. No one spoke. Humanity is new to this galaxy, Ethan continued. We do not know all your customs and all your treaties. We do not understand why you have let so many injustices happen for so long. But we know one thing. We know what is right. He straightened his shoulders and spoke his next words carefully. The Valori are now under human protection. This is not negotiable. This is not a request. If any power threatens them again, they will answer to the United Earth Federation. The Krath representative stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. You cannot do this. You do not have the strength to stand against the Dominion. Ethan smiled slightly. 6 months ago, you thought the same thing. How did that work out? The representative had no answer. Humanity does not want war, Ethan said, addressing the whole council again. We want peace. We want friendship. We want to be good neighbors in this galaxy. But we will not achieve peace by looking away from suffering. We will not earn friendship by staying silent when the weak are crushed. He paused and let his words sink in. If that means we make enemies, so be it. We would rather be hated for standing up than loved for staying silent. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was already decided. No major power wanted to fight humanity over the Valori. The Krath were humiliated. The others were cautious. In the end, the Council officially recognized the Valori-Human Alliance. It was the first military alliance between humanity and an alien species. It would not be the last. Word spread across the galaxy. Other forgotten species heard what had happened. They heard about the humans who had come for strangers. They heard about the young species that did not look away. The Merini were the next to reach out. They had been enslaved by the Orion Confederation for generations. They sent a secret message to Earth, asking if the stories were true. Were there really aliens who helped the helpless? The humans answered, yes. Then came the Telek, driven from their homeworld by the Sithlan Collective. Then the Burath, hunted nearly to extinction by raiders. Then others, and others, and others. Species that had given up hope began to hope again. The broken worlds, people called them. The forgotten and the abandoned. The ones nobody else cared about. But humanity cared. On Kethra Prime, the rebuilding continued. Human engineers worked alongside Valori builders to cleanse the poisoned atmosphere. Human doctors established hospitals to treat the sick. Human teachers opened schools so children could learn without fear. It would take generations to undo 3 centuries of destruction. The Valori knew this. The humans knew this. But they worked anyway, one day at a time. In the central square of the first new Valori city, they built a statue. It showed a human soldier kneeling beside a small Valori child. The soldier was offering a hand of friendship. The child was reaching up to take it. The inscription was simple, written in both English and Valori. You were never forgotten. You were just waiting for us to find you. Commander Daniel Hayes came back for the dedication ceremony. He stood beside Elder Varys, watching as thousands of Valori gathered to celebrate. Their skin glowed bright blue, pulsing with joy and hope. Children ran through the streets, laughing. Adults smiled and talked and made plans for tomorrow. The air was cleaner now, and plants were starting to grow again. I never thought I would see this, Varys said softly. I never thought any of us would. Daniel looked up at the sky. Human and Valori ships patrolled together, their lights blinking in synchronized patterns. Partners, allies, friends. Why did you come? Varys asked him. It was the same question she had asked 6 months ago. But this time, it felt different. This time, she was not asking out of confusion. She was asking because she wanted to remember his answer. Daniel watched the children playing. He thought about all the darkness in the universe, all the cruelty and indifference. He thought about how easy it would have been to fly away and pretend he had never heard that signal. Because someone had to, he said. Because if we do not stand up for each other, then what is the point of any of this? What is the point of exploring the stars if we ignore the cries of those who are suffering? He looked at Varys, this small, ancient being who had survived horrors he could barely imagine. That is what being human means. We do not leave anyone behind. Varys placed her small hand in his. Her skin glowed warm and bright. Then perhaps, she said, humanity is exactly what this galaxy has been waiting for. Above them, the stars shone clear and bright. Somewhere out there, other forgotten species were listening to the stories of Kethra Prime. They were hearing about the humans, who had come from nowhere and changed everything. A new message was spreading across the galaxy. It moved from world to world, from ship to ship, from heart to heart. It gave hope to those who had none. It gave courage to those who had forgotten what courage felt like. The message was simple. The humans are coming. And they never leave anyone behind. In the shadows of distant worlds, the forgotten ones began to lift their heads. They began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were not alone after all. Maybe help was on the way. And across the vast emptiness of space, a young species continued to reach out, continued to answer cries for help, continued to do what so many others would not. Not because it was easy, not because it was safe, not because they would gain anything from it, but because it was right. That was the human way. That was always the human way, and the galaxy would never be the same.